it absolutely is critical to the way your board rides. And it makes no sense whatsoever to spend, 600, 700 pounds on a new board.
Hello and welcome to the UK Surf Show. We are your hosts. I'm Pete.
And I'm Leighton.
And I'm Dom from Origin Surf Co.
Yeah, so this is a special episodes, part 1 of 3, we're thinking.
Yeah, 3 or 4, yeah.
So Dom's from Origin Surfboards. You might recognise him from the 5 Shapers episode. And we've got him on to talk about surfboard anatomy.
Yeah, so this episode we're going to be talking about surfboard anatomy, like everything the surfboard does, from what the rocker is, what the rails do, what the longer nose, shorter nose, and we'll go through it all for people, one, who don't know anything about the boards,
like us,
and two, people who know a bit about the boards. It'll help them if they want to progress further. And then there's probably people out there that know everything about the boards, and you may as well just turn it off now and skip to the next one. So this is part 1 of the series, and if we go over to Dom now, and then he's going to explain some of the terms that he's going to use in this and what they actually mean.
Yeah, sure. So I kind of thought it would be useful because, like you said, people are going to be coming this from different levels of experience, so it might be useful to create a bit of a glossary of terms that we'll be using talking about boards. So if anyone's listening and I start dropping words they don't know what they mean, just come back to this point now. Okay, so I guess the first term we'll be using is the outline. So the outline of a surfboard is probably what most people would consider the shape of the board. It's the most obvious aspect of the board.
Yeah.
So if you were to stand a board up on a wall, stand back and look at it, you'd be looking at the outline, so the plan shape of the board. Another term we'll be using is rocker. So the rocker of the board is largely overlooked, and that's a massive error because I think it's the most important part of a board, but we'll get on to that. So if you were to take that board that's standing up on a wall and turn it 90 degrees sideways so that you're looking at kind of the edge of the board. Mm-hmm. The rocker is the curve that runs end to end on the bottom of the board.
Yeah.
Another term we'll be using is foil. So the foil is the way that on the same profile, looking at the side of the board gets thin to thick to thin again as you go from nose to tail or tail to nose. So it's essentially the way that the bottom rocker interacts with the deck rocker.
Right. I didn't know that at all. I learned something already.
Excellent. That is a good start.
Yeah.
So the next thing that's probably worth covering off is bottom contours. So when I'm talking about bottom contours, I'm going to be talking about if you were to kind of cut a surfboard in half, perpendicular to the stringer, mm-hmm. And look at the kind of shape of the bottom of the board, we work bottom contours into the bottom of the board. So they typically fall into one of 3 categories, really. So there's rolled bottom boards, so that's where the bottom is convex. There's flat bottom boards where it's flat, and there's concave bottom boards where the bottom is kind of concave, mm-hmm. relative to flat.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So and there's loads of different variations within those brackets, but broadly speaking, that's what that is when talking about bottom contours. The rail is fairly obvious what the rail is, I guess. It's the edge of the board.
Yep.
The nose and tail. So these are also fairly obvious terms, nose and tail, but I want to mention them because often, well, as a shaper, when we're talking about the nose and the tail, we're not talking about the very tip. We are always talking about a foot in, 12 inches in from the tail or 12 inches in from the nose is what we're talking about there. So we will get more onto that, I guess, as the conversation goes on. But bear in mind, if we're ever talking about sort of a pulled-in tail or a wide tail, we're not talking about the very end of the board. We're talking about the width, 12 inches up.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
And fins are the little sticky outy bits that come out of the bottom.
The sharp bits, which are always...
The bits he always cuts me with.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
the ones,
So that's a little glossary for you to refer to if we
that's
go
handy.
deep.
That's really handy. So yeah, people can rewind to this point if they get a bit confused.
Cool.
This would be good. So so if somebody come in and asked a surfboard like from you to be shaped, then obviously you're going to go through all these points with them.
Sure.
So should we start with the outline and just the shape of the board, like the difference in them, and maybe the few of the variations? I know there's just an endless amount of variations, but in general, they all kind of slot into a certain category, don't they? So
yeah, broadly speaking, I think there's like, I feel like I should at this point set some expectations from this conversation. If anyone's kind of listening to this episode or future episodes about this, wanting to think, okay, I'm going to listen to this and then understand how surfboards work.
Yeah.
Don't.
No.
Yeah.
You're not going to. It's one of those things where there's really like, there's no answers. There's only better questions, only deeper questions. If that makes sense. So.
Yeah, it's sort of on your own personal preference, isn't it? And then you build on that, and you take that board out, and you'll go, I don't like that. I like the way this works, but I don't like the way that works. So you can then shape it and
sure,
mind the pun, shape it to what you want. Yeah.
So it's all a bit fluid, and
and all of these elements. I mean, none of them are in a vacuum. None of them work in isolation. They all work in conjunction with every other aspect of the board. And I do think that often sort of marketing material around surfcraft is oversimplifying these features. Because they're never in isolation. They always interact with every other aspect of the board. So
does that makes it easier for them to mass produce them if they're
it's got nothing to do with the production. It's got to do with sales. If you make things sort of simple to understand, then they're easy to sell.
Yeah, okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. So this is why somebody would go and have a surfboard shape from a shaper and then stick to that person. They'd stick to like the shaper that they like of what they do and how they make everything work in conjunction.
Sure, and also, similarly, there'll be really large manufacturers out there that will say, well, this board has this and this and this, therefore it's fast. And so that's obviously trying to appeal to people that want to be able to generate speed easier. And in fact, there's probably a number of other things that are going into the way that board works to make it fast. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So, anyway. Okay, so outline. Where to start? So, as a rule for
this is going to be the hardest part for you. It's
kind
of like
a broad
dumbing
spectrum.
It down.
Yeah,
it's dumbing it down for us, isn't it? Really, to try and make us understand.
Sure, and I mean it's also challenging to kind of do this without pictures or without props. You know what I mean? It's normally when I'm talking to this stuff, I've got a board in front of me or pen and paper or whatever. So, so looking at the outline, it is as I said earlier, probably the thing that people think most of when they think of a surfboard shape. So broad rules for outlines. If you're looking at the outline of a board, straight is fast, broadly speaking. So that's probably actually a really interesting point because if you want to make a super efficient planing hull, like just something that gets up out of the water really quickly and then moves efficiently over the top of it, for a human on a wave, it's a piece of timber that's like, 5 foot long and 2 foot wide, and it's completely flat and square. It's an alia, right?
That's possible then.
Yeah,
Wow,
absolutely. Cool. And it's and it's thin.
Yeah.
That is absolutely the most efficient way to get planing.
That's more into the old style of like bodyboard surfing that started off with the pieces of wood, basically.
Exactly. They have downsides though, and they're for a start, there's not much volume in them, so they're hard to get moving and paddle and stuff like that. They're completely straight, so they're really good at generating speed, but they're not great at turning.
Yeah.
But in general, flat means fast. That's the simplest rule. Right. So that's true for outlines, as it's true for rockers.
So is that when you see something like a big gunboard, like that's they always look pretty flat when
they're generally very flat in the tail. Yeah. And the outlines, because they're so long and so thin, that curve is quite slight.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's for that reason. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, it's the different board shapes, I suppose, isn't it? Okay. Like the longboards down to thrusters, I suppose.
Yeah, sure. So fundamentally, the way they work is sort of the same. In that, okay, this is actually a really interesting point. You very rarely, almost never, engage all the board in the wave at once.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. So the way I kind of think of this is that when you're, and this is it's true for all boards. It's more exaggerated with shortboards, but when you're paddling for a wave, it's the kind of the very front section of the board that's really engaged. Mm-hmm. So the width of that section and the amount of rocker that's got and the thickness of the foil in that section is going to be really critical at that point. And then the second you take off, that stops. That does nothing.
Yeah,
and really it's the back half of the board that's doing the work, particularly the last foot and a half.
Yeah, because I mean most photos you see when there's like surf photos taken, the front of the board is often a good sort of 6 to 12 inches out of the water.
Yeah, absolutely.
The whole time.
Absolutely. Once you're up and riding, it's completely redundant. Yeah. Its only job is to get you planing and entered into the wave and the takeoff. And it is quite. I find it a bit funny sometimes because I do get loads of customers that really just want something pointy, but don't really know why.
Yeah,
and it's
the look.
yeah, and it's kind of sometimes it's the right thing, but often it's not.
Yeah, I think we sort of went there on the Five Shapers episode where people in the UK, I feel like after speaking to a lot of people, they don't feel comfortable. They don't feel comfortable, or they don't know enough about surfboards, so they just rely on what they've seen and what they think looks good.
Sure.
Whereas I think this is why this episode I think could help a lot of people, where you can actually explain why this is happening, what this is doing. And you know, just because you want something pointy, you're not going to be Kelly Slater at the end of the day when you do that. You know, it's that sort of thing where it's so many variations on it of how you want to surf, how that board needs to be made.
So what would be the reason for it to be pointy?
That's a great question. Okay, so when we're designing boards, when shapers are designing boards, we create a curve for the outline, and the way we create that is you have a start point and an end point, which is the end, so defined by the length. Then there's a width 1 foot down from the nose, a width 1 foot up from the tail, and a width at the wide point, which is often in the middle, not always, but normally in the middle. So those 5 points plots a curve. Okay, so for instance, if you make a board that has a really narrow nose, you pull that width in. What that does, the benefit of it is that it will, on really steep waves, so, you know, we're talking kind of reef breaks or big slabs or something like that, it will engage on the takeoff sooner.
Right.
So if it's wider, in that instance, it will fight back.
Right.
because it's the
There's
surface
more in
area
the water,
is
yeah.
exactly. It's
Right.
kind of fighting back when you're kind of throwing your weight forward into it. It's pushing back. That's true if it's too thick as well in the nose. Whereas wider boards will allow you to paddle faster. So
Right.
wider nosed boards will allow you to get more speed up and get a little higher out of the water, which is really beneficial for slow breaking waves.
Yeah.
Much more like what we ride here
Yeah.
most of the time.
So when you see those super skinny, really pointy, like something you'd see Kelly Slater riding,
Right.
don't really work that well in this country.
9 times out of 10.
No.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Similarly with the tail. So the tail width, so a pulled in tail is really, really good at creating hold and drive when you're in the pocket and you're in like a really steep faced wave or in a barrel or something like that. It just kind of locks in and it's super secure and fantastic. But it's not very good at generating speed, whereas a wider tailed board will get up and when you're riding, it'll get up and plane a bit easier and generate its own speed much easier, but is more likely to sort of slide out in really, really high performance waves. So, yeah, it's a compromise.
So when you choose, so basically you select the break you're going to be surfing, or the country at least that you're surfing in, and then that will help you decide on the width of the nose and the width of the tail.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's a whole bunch of things that feed into that. I mean, the country is a good place to start, but, the conditions on the day is another part of it.
Yeah.
And the abilities of the surfer is another part of it. The fitness levels, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you make me a boat?
So the middle point of that outline then, is that's generally where a surfer would lay when they are paddling for the wave and where their front foot goes, and is that why it's the widest part of the board?
So, this is difficult to explain. Yes, that's true. It's roughly where your front foot goes. Modern boards and modern surfers like to turn off the back foot. I should point out, not all boards work that way.
Right.
So this is actually a good time to make this distinction, actually. What we're talking about when we're talking about kind of typical surfboard design, we're talking about planing hulls that get up out of the water, as I said. There's a whole other kind of arm of surfboard design that we're definitely not going to talk about past this point, called displacement hulls. So while planing hulls are designed to get up out of the water and move efficiently over the top of it, displacement hulls are designed to move very efficiently through the water. And they ride completely differently. You kind of turn off the front foot rather than the back foot.
Is that like the ones Marty was making? Those
Marty has done some hulls, yeah, absolutely.
They sound insane.
It's a completely different thing. They're typically single fin. The fin is set really far forward from the tail, and it's a flex fin, so they kind of bend and load up with energy as you turn, and then as you release the turn, they release and accelerate you forward, and it's all if anyone's it's amazing. But if anyone's interested in that, check out Greg Little. He's kind of the granddaddy of displacement hulls, and he does some pretty amazing stuff over in the States there. But we're not going to talk about displacement because it's just muddies the water, right?
No.
So planing hulls.
I think most people, if they are still going to buy a board off the shelf, you're not going to get that on an off the shelf board really. And two, if they're going to go to a shaper, which I think the more you speak about it, the more sense it makes. You can get something really personal to you, like made exactly for you. Unless you're at that level where you know all of this stuff already, and then you're going to start playing with, you're that good, you're bored of surfing normally, you want to make it more of a challenge again. I think that's the way you start going to stuff like that.
Sure.
Yeah. So the different shapes then, if we go away from the displacement ones, so nobody can really buy one unless they have it shaped then, basically, in this country, is that right?
As far as I know, no one's doing it sort of mass produced.
Right.
Yeah.
So in that case, then most people are going to be riding the flat bottoms, and so that is the general shape of it. And the outline that kind of is dictated by what we said, by like the width of the nose and the tail, and that depends on where you're riding and what the ability you're at.
Yes.
So that makes it really difficult for you as a shaper when somebody comes in to tell you their ability, because
because that is that's relative.
Yeah.
Like if I ask you, are you a good surfer? What does that mean?
No.
It's really frustrating, because we've had a couple of sessions at Saunton in the summer, and they were evening sessions. They were always an evening session for some reason, and you had these lovely long rolling waves. Get them, bang, no problem, and you think, well, I'm really getting this now, and then you'll. Another day will come, and it's not exactly the same type of conditions. It won't be much different. Maybe a little bit more of a difficult paddle out. A bit more white water than was before. Can't do it at all. Totally shit. And you're like, so how do you explain that?
And I mean, the thing is, right? Say 5 years from now, when that's not happening anymore, there will be something else that you identify as, oh, I can't do this thing today, and that makes me absolutely utterly shit.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like that's sort of what I mean. Like the self-assessment of ability doesn't really work.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, the best thing for me about shaping from Bristol is that I can go and watch my customers surf at the wave.
Yeah.
And honestly, like that makes the world of difference. And having kind of tester boards that I can give them, watch them ride it. I can't always do that. It's just set that expectation if anyone's listening.
Would you say that's a difficulty though as well? Because the way the wave breaks at the wave is not the way the wave breaks at shore break in the UK.
Sure.
Is that something you have to take into account? If you're going to use the board at the wave, it's like this. If you're going to take it down to Saunton, Zenon, Woolacombe, over into Wales, wherever. Right. It's got to be different.
Right. I mean, that's definitely true. I guess from my perspective, if I know what they're paddling out on and I see the way that they handle, how easy they find it to paddle, how easy they find it to get waves, how easy they find it to turn, all that stuff, generate speed, and get a feel for their style as well.
Because I didn't think of thinking of the shape of the board when you're paddling, because that's what you're doing most of the time, isn't it? That is like 99% of being on the board is paddling. So, if they're on a board that they can't paddle very well, but they could potentially stand up on and surf at the wave, you don't really need to paddle as hard, do you? And it's not like it's difficult to get out there or anything.
Yeah.
So, I suppose I've never really thought that, like taking into account how you paddle on it.
Yeah, but it all kind of feeds into it, and I mean that paddleability is really important to me because, well, in my mind, because as you say, you spend so much time doing it, and if I've seen loads of people on the wrong equipment that they're just constantly fighting to get back out the back and get another wave, and they're absolutely knackered when they get there because they're riding a board that's too small, and if that's you, like, you're not doing yourself any favors, right? No. Because you're getting fewer waves basically, and you're improving at a slower rate if that's where you're at.
Definitely. Well, that's definitely been us.
We've done that. We've done that like multiple times, going out when it's too big and you're just constantly fighting. Or
we mentioned that something actually that happened in the previous podcast. We went out at Putsborough on a really big day there. It was probably the biggest day that they had. What was it, like October?
Oh yeah. But it was big.
It was just we're the only people out on longboards. It was just ridiculous.
Literally, people paddling past us like, look at those idiots.
Yeah, it was just ridiculous. And
it was proper hard work. He went over the falls backwards.
Oh really?
Amazing. Yeah, backwards. There was
as you were paddling out.
It was sat there. It was knackered. Yeah. Sat there waiting for. Like, I was quite impressed that we got out there on longboards because it was such a big day.
Yeah.
And I'm sat there looking out, waiting for a wave to come, and there's one coming, and I'm like really tired, and I think I'll time this right. I'll just, it's about a break, but I'll just, I'm not going to paddle out a bit further.
I was about 2 foot further out than him at this point,
and it just grabbed hold of the board and took me backwards into the shore, and I just went.
Yeah, I said on the last one, I thought he had some new wave taking off or something like that. He went so fast, all of a sudden he just went boom backwards like that. I was like, shit, where's he gone?
Oh, it's never.
Yeah, and that was actually my first experience of like a proper hold down.
Oh, right.
And that was flipping terrifying.
Yeah, it
You know,
is.
not under the water for very long at all, really, in terms of seconds. But
It's the lack of control, though, and it's...
Yeah.
I kind of like that a bit.
Do you?
I don't know why. I just like...
it's just weird. That's
I know,
why.
I
That's a
don't
little
like
view into
really
your
driving.
personality, mate.
I just go under and think, well, this is it.
At least I've got to go work tomorrow.
Yeah,
I dunno.
I've had some doozies over the years as well.
Yeah.
But, anyway, made it out.
Yeah, it wasn't fun.
Yeah,
was it?
so no, like that thing you were saying, like, you know, you take the same board out on those different days, and, you know, we've had those days at Saunton where it's been absolutely brilliant, and you go again, or Saunton, Westwood Ho, that area, and it's more or less the same conditions, but it's just slightly, you know, there's slightly more wind, or the waves aren't as they were, and it's not a massive. You go out, you're like, oh, this is like it was the other day, and you just.
Yeah, there's like no power in the
doesn't
waves,
work.
so you got to paddle harder.
This
or
is
Yeah.
this is where this is going to be, I think, quite hard to explain for you. Or we've given you a really difficult job with no
Yeah,
visual
it
aids,
is.
haven't we?
I didn't realise how difficult that would be until we're here.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I don't know. What's the best if you were talking to somebody to design a board after you've gone over the outline with them, which then dictates what type of board they're having.
Well, yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm kind of the way I approach it is more about asking loads of questions up front before saying, right, this is the outline you need, because it's like I said before, it doesn't happen in isolation. So
this is why it's
Okay.
difficult to break
So-
it down into categories, then, isn't it?
yeah,
Right.
massively.
Okay, if we go then through so what the other bits do, what the rocker does, you know, what the concave is going to do,
Yeah.
what the different noses are, and then in our next episode, well, we can tell everybody because this is going to be a 3-part, 4-part one, whatever it turns out to be, is you'll actually give us a consultation
Sure.
to making our boards.
Because we're having shaped boards. I'm so excited.
Seriously, he's had a boner for about 3 months.
Dom's been sending me like these pictures of boards he's making, and I'm like, oh God, I keep changing my mind. You know, like the colour, the one you sent me the other day, the colour. Oh, it's just gorgeous.
Oh, the amber one. Yeah, it's so
absolutely
nice.
beautiful. And when you said, oh, this will really pop when you surf at sunset, I'm like, oh, I've got to have an orange board now.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like I'm not part of this group. I'm going to leave.
I'll show you the picture later. So we've done the outline, and that kind of says what kind of shape you get, and we touched on the nose and the tail slightly in that, didn't we? So, and then you said you think that the rocker is massively,
massively overlooked.
Yeah.
So in a lot of ways, I think you actually start designing with the rocker.
Oh, really?
I think that's, for me anyway.
Yeah.
And I haven't really had in-depth conversations with other shapers about this, so I'll be interested to know actually what anyone else who builds boards thinks about it. But to me, it's the most important thing. It defines the way the board will ride more than anything. And you kind of set the outline to the rocker, not the other way around. But rocker is, I think part of the reason it's overlooked is that it's hard to sort of see differences. Very small changes make a massive difference to how it rides. And it's also hard to articulate. So often you'll see a rocker described as, 1 1/4 inch in the tail and 3 3/8 in the nose or something. But that doesn't really tell the whole story. So the way they'd measure that is you'd flip the board so it's bottom side up, put a
spirit level across it.
A straight piece of something on it, and measure the distance from that level to the tail, and that distance from the level to the nose, and go, right, well, that's the distance.
Yep.
But that's a distance. It's not a curve.
Yeah.
The rocker is curved. It's not straight. So I actually know an old shaper in Oz who used to measure his rockers in radius. So he'd have like a 28-foot rocker and a 32-foot rocker.
And you're thinking, what?
Honestly, and the way he did it, he measured out, 32 foot in his front yard on a piece of string, and then like drew a line on a bit of cardboard and said, right, well, that's that 38-foot rocker. you know.
It's like
You would have thought,
surfing
when
a
you-
fish bowl.
Yeah, so it's like he's made a bubble.
But it's an unorthodox approach. I understand, but it kind of highlights the issue because it is a curve. It's not straight. So, but so basically, all right, we'll break it into the front half of the board and the back half of the board. A super curvy rocker in the front half of the board will allow you to engage earlier,
Right.
in steep takeoffs.
Yeah, I was about to say. So that's needed in a steep wave.
Right.
Right.
In fatter waves and slower waves, a lower rocker will help you get up and plane earlier.
Right. So for longboards, then really.
For longboards or grovelers or anything. Well, it can be a shortboard as well with a low rocker.
Right.
But so it's obviously there's within brackets here, but that rule of thumb that is the kind of effect it will have. The tail is sort of the same in the opposite way. So a really low rocker, really flat rocker in the tail will make the board incredibly efficient at generating speed. So when you're sort of pumping along or in trim or something like that, you can generate loads of speed off very little energy. A curvy rocker or a high rocker in the tail will lose the ability to generate speed as easily, but it will make it more efficient and easier to turn.
Right.
So,
So you couldn't have a super fast board that turns really easy as well.
Well,
Wow. Here we
we'll
go.
come to that.
Yes.
So when you see like guys on large waves, shortboards, that's going to be something that turns very quickly, but doesn't need to generate as much speed because the wave's so steep.
So, right. So, if you're surfing a break that is quite steep and powerful and throwing out loads and loads of energy, you don't need to harness all that to get moving. But what's really useful is to be able to turn efficiently. So that's where you get to really progressive, like vertical surfing.
Yeah.
So when you're at the end of your bottom turn, the board's vertical, and when you're at the end of your top turn, the board's vertical. So you're kind of doing that really high performance thing rather than riding something with sort of less power and less shape to it. And you're more in trim. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's you can't really have a rocker that does both until you. And you bring in some other elements and you can kind of offset some of the downsides to a design feature.
Yeah.
Because there's pros and cons to absolutely everything here. So it's about, designing something that will do an intended job with as few compromises as possible.
Right.
If that makes sense.
So you're like tweaking levels on everything to get the right balance.
Right. So, for instance, okay, because we've spoken about outline, we've spoken about rocker.
Yep.
So, if you wanted a board that would generate speed really, really easily, that was also easy to turn, you could put quite a low rocker in the tail to help it generate speed and keep the tail fairly wide, helping it plane. So you've got a larger planing area there. But then pull the tail in, creating a curve and a pivot point.
Oh, I see. And you would stand towards the back to then turn
So
the
that's that. Yeah, I'm picturing sort of something quite short where you've got your back foot planted above the fins,
right?
And you're kind of pivoting off the back foot.
Oh, I see. Right.
So yeah, that's a way in which that you could, offset the downside to being able to generate loads of speed from a flat rocker by making it easier to turn by pulling the tail in a bit.
Yeah.
So it is it's one of those things like when you say the anatomy of the surfboard, it's pretty much anything is doable.
Sure.
But where you compromise on something else.
Nothing is possible without compromise. I think that's the point. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can't you can't just deny.
So I was just pointing at my wedding ring.
So you couldn't just say so. You couldn't just design the rocker and they would get the type of board they wanted for generating speed. Everything comes into it.
It's like I said at the beginning. Nothing is in isolation.
Yeah,
everything, every single aspect of the design will affect the way it rides.
So, but in like generalization, then, so a board with less rocker means more speed.
Yeah,
easier to catch.
More efficient at generating its own speed.
Yeah, so it's easier to catch waves than with
in the tail. Yeah, it depends on the rails. It depends on it depends on the waves, and it depends on are you talking about the nose rocker or the tail rocker?
Yeah, of course.
There are no answers. We spoke about this. Yeah. There's no answers, only better questions.
Yeah, I'm trying to get the right one. Okay, so that explains the rocker then. Yeah. So what about the rails?
Yeah, okay. So rails, I'm going to paint some broad strokes about rails. Part of the rail shape is determined by the rest of the board. So, for instance, on a longboard, longboards often, we will talk more about this, traditional longboards often have a rounded bottom where the bottom's kind of convex. So as you get towards the rail, the bottom's kind of curving up as the deck is curving down. So you kind of end up there with a particular type of shape as a result of that, and everything you do from that point to tweak it, it's still defined by the shape of the overall board, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So rails are quite sympathetic to other elements of the board, but some broad strokes you'll hear people talking about 50-50 rails or 60-40, 70-30, whatever.
That's the proportion of the curve,
right? So yes, if you cut a board in half and you look at where the apex of the rail is relative to the thickness of the board, a 50-50 rail, the rail comes to its apex halfway through the thickness of the overall board. A 70-30 rail comes to the apex further down. So, 30%, 70%, exactly.
Yeah.
60-40 is in between.
Yeah.
So you'll hear about that. That's what that's referring to. And that is largely defined by the other elements of the board. So, for instance, you wouldn't have a rounded bottom longboard with a 70-30 rail.
Right.
It doesn't make sense because it's not really possible.
It's not like a flowing shape or anything like that. Then it wouldn't.
It's not what, sorry?
Like a flowing shape. It wouldn't. It just wouldn't work.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
You kind of get some kind of angle or some kind of
yeah.
Like the curves just don't blend. The curves don't blend together, then, do they?
Exactly.
Right.
The curves wouldn't meet in a natural way. So, and maybe that's where I'm going wrong. I don't know. Maybe my shapes would be great if I did a 70-30 rail on a rounded bottom board. But who knows? So yeah, that's sort of that part. Really broad strokes on rails because there's all different kinds of profiles. There's kind of knifey rails. There's boxy rails. There's kind of medium rails. They're all different. This is hard to explain. They all work in conjunction with other parts of the board, and so they're kind of defined by the other design elements in the board rather than something unto themselves.
Yeah.
But broadly speaking, a rail that is really fine, so really thin, is really fast and really good at engaging in steep surf. When you're in trim, imagine.
Yeah.
It's penetrating kind of deeper into the water and harnessing energy more efficiently and propelling you forward more efficiently.
I presume the wave, with it being cut into the water, it's kind of holding it.
Right.
So it's keeping it stable as well.
Right. Yeah. No, that's definitely true. Whereas in... How do I explain this? So, say a fatter rail, a thicker rail, wouldn't deliver as much hold and wouldn't deliver as much drive, but it would actually carry much more speed through turns.
Yeah.
because a thinner rail penetrates deeper into the water and requires more power to keep it rolling forward. Whereas, say you're all right, imagine this scenario. You're in trim and you're flying along, and then you want to do a big kind of roundhouse back into it. You put it up on its backside rail, coming back into the pocket. In that section of the wave, it's fairly flat and fairly underpowered, so you would move more efficiently through that turn with a fatter rail that's not penetrating quite as deep into the water.
Yeah, because you got to try and lift that thin rail out of the
Right.
face of the water.
So disengaging that thinner rail on a fatter wave is harder, and on a fatter wave or a fatter section, it'll just kind of bury itself too deep without that kind of extra power available to keep it going.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's sort of a compromise. So like in boards that are made for really, really high performance waves, having a really fine rail is definitely advantageous.
Yep.
Gives you better hold in steep sections, generates loads of speed because there's loads of speed to be had, loads of power to be had from the waves, and you can kind of throw it around no worries. Whereas for kind of sloppier waves, a slightly fatter rail will actually keep it a little bit looser and a little bit easier to turn, as well as carry the speed through the turn more efficiently.
Right.
Because it's not penetrating quite as deep into the water.
You're out of the water more then.
Right, exactly.
Right, okay.
Exactly.
Right. That makes sense.
The flip side to that, though, because you hear that and you go, well, great, because fat
I want a
rails...
fat rail now.
What-
Now you're
right.
going to go, actually, here's another spanner for the works.
Yeah, here's a spanner in the works, because if you ride a board with fat rails in really steep surf, it'll just slide out. It doesn't have the hold.
Yeah, I think my board that I always say is like big and heavy has got quite fat rails on it, and I do have that when it goes a bit steeper. It's like it's like being on an ice rink. Sometimes it's literally like boom, it won't just slide out like forward or backwards. It will go sideways or something like that.
Right.
Which you think you've got a fin in the back, which is supposed to keep it. It's going that way. How's that possible? It's going sideways.
Right. So that is the perfect example of a rail that is not perfectly suited to those conditions.
Yeah.
The rail's kind of fighting you, basically. It's sitting too proud of the face. It's not penetrated deep enough, and it's not giving you the hold that you need.
It's not often when I'm on a wave and I try and turn, and it's literally like it's like being on a skateboard and power sliding and losing the board, and it just like that it goes.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And you can try and counteract that with like a bigger fin or bigger fins.
Yeah.
Fins we'll get onto later.
Did you look nervous?
Looked a little bit scared then. Yeah.
Fins is the worst part, isn't it? It's got to be.
Fins. Oh no.
We'll get onto that in a minute then.
We will. Do you know what? Let's talk about fins now.
Yeah.
Oh no. Do you know what? No. Let's not do that. Let's talk about bottom contours. Are we cool with rails? You get rails?
Yeah.
Better pictures?
Rails, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
So bottom contours.
So that's it. That before we go off rails, that's still
Before we go off rail.
Yeah, before we go off the rails. Yeah, that happened a long time ago. So how would you say someone's came to you then and they're like, right, I want to surf Cornwall, Devon.
Yeah.
Where would you go? Where would you like an average surfer would be?
Yeah, what are you talking about?
Thicker,
Longboard
thinner,
or?
rails?
Well, so that's kind of I need more information. I need. So I'll tell you what I need to know. I need to know what they're already riding, what they like about what they're riding, what they don't like about their riding, what their abilities are, where they feel there's a hole in their quiver. There's loads of questions.
Say like what I just said with it feels like sometimes my board just does slide out, so the rails are too fat on that.
Yeah.
Would you just go, right, well, you just need to take the rails down a bit then? That will counteract that?
That would be part of it. It may not necessarily be everything. And it's hard to comment on that because I can't see your board.
stature is...
Mate, you have a lovely stature. Don't talk like that about yourself.
Sorry, okay, my Adonis stature.
It is really tough to kind of answer that question hypothetically.
Yeah. That's really, right. I don't.
Some of these questions
make it more difficult for you.
Yeah, good.
Some of them might get answered in the next.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the point. Yeah.
So the bottom contours then.
Yeah.
And they're obviously different from the nose and the tail and like all the way through. So how would that work?
Right. So, okay, let's start with concaves. We'll start with concaves. So concaves are obviously where the board isn't flat, it's going in. It's concaved into the bottom of the board. Broadly speaking, there's a couple of different types of concaves. There's single concaves, there's double concaves, there's V with concave, and there's all manner of things in between. Broadly speaking, having concaves in the back half of the board, which is most often where you find them, in shortboards.
Yep.
Okay, because So we're talking about shortboards here. In the back half of a shortboard, having a concave will basically create lift and get it up and out of the water, get it planing higher, and as a result, so you need to ride it right for this to be true, but it will help generate speed. So if you're coming through a flat section, you see it all the time, guys on shortboards, coming through a flat section, they start pumping.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right?
Or they just sink, don't they, otherwise? So.
Well, yeah, I sink. Yeah. That's I'm definitely in the latter category. But when they're doing that, the reason they're able to generate speed and keep going is they've got contours in the bottom of the board, they've got concaves there that are activating at that point particularly well. So it's kind of like, I always think of it as like doing little mini ollies. And as you do it, you kind of creating like a little bubble of water under the board. And
then you're pushing it out again and
right,
generating speed, right?
Right, exactly. So, broadly speaking, that's kind of what contours do. You can use in the tail. I should also sort of say at this point, and I don't know, again, if this is the way that other shapers see it, but I always look at setting contours in a board as a way of modifying the rocker at a particular section of the board.
Ah, right.
So, for instance, if you have really common contour in the back half of a higher performance board is to go from single to double to V concave. So if you have a single to double to V, if you were to cut the board down the stringer, as you go from that single to double to V, the rocker is staying relatively flat.
Right.
If you look then at the curve that's created on the rail of the board, it's curvier than the stringer, because in the single concave section, the rail's downturned.
Right.
Through the double section, it's slightly less so, and through the V, it kicks up.
Oh, I see, right.
So what you have then is a really relatively straight rail through the center of the board. A relatively straight rocker through the center of the board, and a relatively curvy rocker at the rail.
Right.
So flat being fast in the center.
Yeah.
The engine room is powerful.
Yeah.
Curvy being maneuverable on the rail makes it easy to turn.
So when you're not turning, you're generating speed, and then
Right.
when you turn, it will turn easier.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
I suppose for a
How the hell
longboard,
do you shape something like that? Sounds impossible.
so for a longboard, that probably goes all out the window then.
Not entirely, but the front half of a shortboard we'll cover off as first maybe.
Yeah.
You don't often see a lot of contouring in shortboard noses. So having a concave in a shortboard nose can be really, really good for an incredibly efficient, fit, capable surfer, like world-class, world tour kind of surfer.
Yeah.
Right.
For everyone else, it just makes it harder to catch waves.
Right.
Okay.
In a shortboard. Okay. What I quite like actually in shortboards sometimes is having a bit of a belly in the nose, very slight. because it can help the board kind of engage slightly earlier in steep takeoffs. So this is one of those compromises, right? Where you go, want extra paddle power, so I'm going to go slightly wider across the nose, but I'm worried that if I want to use that in a steeper takeoff, that it's going to fight me on the takeoff. So I'll give it a little bit of a belly, ever so slightly, to help it engage a little bit earlier at that point.
Yeah. So that's cutting through the water easier then when you're doing that. And
right. Yeah.
Right. That's okay. I understand. I think.
Okay. So longboards, the back half is the same sort of thing, really.
Yeah.
Longboards traditional longboards will have a rolled out bottom, normally kind of a rolled out bottom into V. The V is there to kind of keep it lively, make it easy to transition rail to rail, that sort of thing through turns. Rolled out bottom, I think, is more about kind of leading to that rail shape that you really like on particularly on nose riders, where you want kind of that relatively fine rail, kind of almost pinched out, so that as you step forward, it buries deeper into the wall of the wave.
Yeah, I've noticed that because that's how they manage to stand on the front, don't they? Like the rest of the board seems to be being held by the wave,
right?
And I presume there's I've seen teardrop shaped concaves on the nose,
right? So I was going to get to that,
because some shapers actually draw them in, don't they? You can they've put like a band around them so you can see it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really common. The teardrop thing is really, really common. There are also less obvious concaves, and less not obvious, but kind of extreme concaves in the nose of a lot of longboards designed for nose riding. So, in that instance, having a concave in the nose kind of acts as a brake,
right?
So, because I've had longboards that were made for nose riding with flat bottoms in the nose, and it is unreal how quick they take off. Like when you so you'll set a line and step forward to the nose, and you'll be up there, right on the nose, having a lovely time. And once you get kind of past, I don't know, say 18 inches from the end, so when you're right up on the nose, it just like rockets. It just rockets forward, and you're there.
That's with no concave,
right? With a flat bottom,
right,
and a thin foil.
In that instance, it's going to then, if it rockets forwards, it's going to pull you out of the wave and just nosedive.
And this is the thing; it takes you out of the place where you want to be, the sweet spot, and you're out in the shoulder, and then all of a sudden there's no power, and it's really fat, and you just nosedive, and you're done.
Yeah.
So like having a concave can be really useful in the nose
to keep you in the sweet spot.
Keeps you in the sweet spot,
right?
Yeah. So that's sort of what that's about.
So if you had a flat bottom and you wanted to nose ride, would that mean you'd make the rails really thin, and that would hold it in the wave a bit more, or?
You could do that. It wouldn't alleviate the problem of being fast. It'd probably make it worse.
Right. Oh, okay.
But I mean,
this is why he's a shaper and you're not.
No. The thing is, so there's nothing wrong with having a board that takes off when you nose ride. It's actually pretty cool, but it just means that you have to walk it. You can't just. 20-year-old me used to love that. I'd be like up on the nose, little toe tap, walk it back, turn, do all that stuff. Now I'm just kind of old, and I just want to park up there.
40-year-old dude goes, arthritis.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, my hips are a bit tight. Don't know if I can really walk it anymore.
Yeah, it's that. Well, I was saying in a previous one that like Leighton saw me catching I was sort of like it's more like a hang 5 than a hang 10. It's like the ninja stance, like foot
stretch
right out.
5, yeah, stretching your foot.
Yeah, stretching my foot right out, and that was a complete. I've been trying to do it for ages, and it just took the board right, and the back of the board it felt like the back of the board just got sucked into the wave, and I was like,
right.
just locked in place.
This is it.
Yeah. That is exactly it.
Yeah. And I could feel it, and I like moved forwards, and like I was still stoked that he saw it at the time. As I came out, I was like, "Tell me you saw that. Tell me you saw that." He's like, "Yes, I saw that."
Yeah, shut up about it.
I wish I'd seen it.
I've been trying to do it for so long, and I kept getting forwards, and then you'd feel it come back out. And what you've just explained is like, right, I want that. That is what I want.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking as you're explaining.
I want that.
Yeah.
Thin rails, concave nose, big wide spoon thing.
Yeah. So, but as you say, we'll move into that on the next one. Yeah. So that will bring us on then from there. Will that then bring us on to fins?
Yeah. Dun, dun, dun.
Before we get on fins, is there anything different that you do on the deck? So if we did the bottom, would you? Is it worth different shapes on the deck? Because I know when you see like big guns, they're quite rounded on the top, aren't they? On the deck. But
so that's kind of a result of having low fine rails,
right?
Do you see what I mean? So,
so that'll be the 30%, the 70s, then got to go in over that. Yeah,
exactly. I sort of see the contouring on the deck as being kind of a result of all of the other elements.
Oh, okay.
It just kind of it is the way it is to blend the curves.
Yeah. So
right
you don't choose that. That's just what happens as a result of everything else.
Right. That said,
every single part is that said.
There's a caveat for everything. Yeah. Seriously. So there's a few shapers that I know of that are really big on doing deck concaves.
Right.
Does this?
That was amazing.
Trying to get my head right.
Was it complete confusion on his face? Then
it was. I mean, it was. I think it was a little bit of fear.
Right. Yeah. So you kind of be led in the. That's a boat. That is a boat.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's more subtle than that. But to be honest, it's not something I've really experimented with, and I don't know that I could rightly comment on it. But there are people that focus on that. I'm a bit more conventional in that sense. I haven't gone down that path.
So would you say, going into all these shapes and everything then of like the different things that do for different parts of the board, would you say when you see someone, like we saw a guy a few years ago and he was like taking off really quickly on everything.
He was incredible. Yeah.
And we was like, he must have so much paddle strength. Yeah. Or would it be, he's got good paddle strength, but it's probably, 60-70% of that is the board shape that he's on.
I mean,
it was quite
for sure.
It was quite a small day, wasn't it? He was helping other people, which was really nice to say, this is what you should be doing. But he was literally like talking to someone. Wave comes in. It was at Woolacombe, so it wasn't massive waves, and they were longboard waves basically. And he was on a huge board, and it would just literally turn a couple of paddles up straight away, and then cruising this thing way before it was even going to break. He's just riding this lovely lump for ages.
Yeah. So I mean, that wouldn't happen if he didn't have a fitness level and a skill level to kind of make that happen.
Right.
Yeah. But it does sound like the board had a lot to do with it.
Yeah. He knew what board to choose.
He was on the right equipment. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I mean. So I don't want people to think, oh well, if I get a shaper to make me a board, or if Dom makes me a board, I'm going to be the best surfer out there.
No, honestly, if I make your board, you're genuinely going to be the best surfer out there.
I was about to say, that's what I was hoping.
Don't want to throw in a little bit of if you want to go to Orange and surfboard.
You will become the world-class surfer.
Yeah. But
you're absolutely right.
Your board will help that, but you've still got to have that fitness level anyway. You can't you can't turn up 20 stone and go, right, I've bought a shaped board, and I'm going to be the best surfer now because I've got a shaped board.
Absolutely. I mean, they're not. They absolutely require the rider's input to work in the way they should. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of ways, actually, the right board kind of complements your existing skill set.
Yeah.
Rather than brings new skill sets. So, like, it is a bit of a trap. Sometimes people will. Want to go sort of too early to a more advanced board. They'll be on like a mini mal, and they want to be able to do turns, like bigger turns, or ride bigger stuff or whatever. It's not necessarily true that putting that rider on a high performance board is going to yield that, because I mean, if you can do big turns on a short board, you can definitely do big turns on a minimal.
Yeah,
you know, like you've got to put the right.
Yeah,
you got to have the right input into the board for it to react in that way.
Yeah, I didn't want people to feel like if they were going to get a board shaped, they'd spend, because it is a lot of money to spend on a board. Especially like if you look at it in the UK. Fair enough. If you're in Australia and you've got surf every day where you can actually surf, great. In the UK, you could get your board shaped and sit there with it for like 2 months because there's bugger all out there.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't want people to think, if I get a shaped board, I'm going to be amazing. But there's a lot of things I've noticed with my board. There's a lot of things with my board at the moment, which is just a standard board, standard longboard, that a lot of times you can feel the board working against you, and you've actually got to do more things. And like you've got to position. Like if the wave's slightly different on the board I've got at the moment, I've got to be in a completely different position on the board where I can line myself up on the board and go, all right, I'm taking off great this day, do exactly the same thing the next time out, and I'm nosediving it every time, and I'm like, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah,
you know, because I think that's because it's a standard board and it's not reacting.
I mean, it might be that it is. I mean,
it's me mostly.
No. I wasn't going to say that.
Yeah. You don't have to be polite. It's all right.
No, I mean, I've been surfing for most of my life, and I still don't think I've ever ridden two waves that are exactly the same.
Yeah.
No.
And this is the thing, like, it is one of those sports that you are constantly learning. Constantly, you never stop learning, and so it could be the board's not suited for you, but it could also just be that you know that's a new experience for you, like slightly different conditions, and you've learnt something from that, and that's now in your toolkit, dealing with that.
Yeah, it's a long drive home from Saunton when you've had a shit surf. It is, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's proper. Yeah,
I think we've all had those.
Yeah. But
before we move on to the fins, because I know we're getting to that, there'll be a lot of talk. Well, there is a lot of talk about volume, isn't there?
That's actually a really good point, actually.
Yeah,
and
because over recent years that seems to have been more important. It sounds like people seem to be focusing on it more. I think what's happened, say over the last 10 years or so, consumers have become more aware of volume. And, I'm quite proud to say I remember the surf industry in the 90s.
You're proud to say that?
Yeah, no, I am proud.
It's kind of cool then, wasn't it?
No, that's all right. Yeah, I don't remember the 90s. I was barely born then, I think.
Great.
That's a lie.
But so then it was all anyone knew about their board was the length of it.
Yeah.
Some people might know the width, but basically they just knew the length. No one really cared. No, more or less, variations on the theme, but there wasn't a huge variety there.
I can remember growing up, I can remember around the 90s as well, and it was people's conversation was just how short your board was.
Right.
That was the consituation.
And that's
it was
why you've got that really short thing, because that's when you got it.
Yeah. It was in the 90s, and I got a literally it's like an HB2 pencil. It's probably it is tiny. I think it's under 6 foot anyway.
Yeah.
And it's just a tiny thing. But I did the same thing of being young and going, wow, if I get this really short board, I'm going to be amazing.
Right.
And literally, the thing's like a rocket for a start, isn't it? And it's just so unstable. It's just,
Yeah.
We both stood up on it back in the day.
I don't think I did. I think you did.
I did, because I went into that big fat bloke.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, he wasn't happy. Yeah,
big fat angry
literally harpooned him on the beach.
Oh dear.
Yeah, but literally that was the thing of we didn't know what we were doing. We were young. We were like 13, 14, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah,
and literally just first time I've stood up on this thing, what, bang, straight into him, and but it's that thing. It's like, and I got a short board because at the time, talking with friends and stuff, it was like the shorter the board, the better you are.
Right.
That was.
And thankfully, I think the industry sort of moved on from that kind of thinking in a lot of ways. But yeah, so as things kind of evolved over those years, the last 20 years or so, oh geez, 30 years now. Sorry, lost a decade. Terrible.
That's painful. I thought,
savage. Yeah, things have changed, and now you can buy a 6.1 board that is 28 litres, 27 litres, or you can buy a 6.1 that's 50 litres.
Yeah.
Completely different things. So like I think as that kind of evolution started to happen, as designs changed, people started to realise the importance of volume, and understanding not just that you're riding a shortboard or a longboard, but how big is it actually? Like how will you interact with it?
So the volume amount or level, if you like, that will give you an idea of how buoyant that board is, and
exactly.
if you can actually lay on the thing without it sinking.
Exactly, and it's the thing is, it's not quite as simple as that, because it's the way a board will react is when you're riding it anyway, is more about where that volume is.
Right.
In the board rather than the total volume of it. That's where things like foil and rail profiles really come into their own.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of how it will paddle, and how it will, if you, like you said, if you can lie on it without it sinking or not, that's exactly where that comes in.
Right.
But yeah, it's not to say that all high volume boards will ride badly or all low volume boards will be super responsive. It's kind of about where the volume sits in the board.
Is there like a rule of thumb, like a general rule of thumb, depending on weight and volume?
No.
It's more down to
because of all the stuff you just said.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering if there's something that you can go, right, well, I weigh this much, so between this range would be something that I would kind of look at.
I mean, I can. So I'm hesitant to kind of put figures on it because there's the third massive element in that equation is who's riding it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your ability as well comes into play. So say you're a beginner surfer, and you're looking for some easy riding longboard, which can be easy to catch anything and stuff.
Sure.
What kind of volume would that kind of look like in general, like a bracket?
I think so. Longboards volume becomes less important, less critical.
Okay,
but it'd probably be up somewhere around between 75 and 85 litres, I guess.
Right. So you could nearly like just stand on the thing out in the sea and it wouldn't be moving and you'd just be floating on it. Like
it does still matter. You can have, if you have a board that's too voluminous, it can really fight you when you're learning, because what you lose is the ability to transfer weight backwards and forwards easily, which when you're catching waves, whether people are kind of aware of it or not, you actually transfer your weight quite a lot.
Yeah.
So if you're kind of doing that and there's too much volume in the nose of the thing, or
it won't respond.
It won't do it.
Right.
Yeah. But the flip side of that is loads of volume will make it easier to paddle, and you'll be sitting out of the water more, and you won't be able to turn it. So it's like it's all
So there's no find a balance, don't you?
Yeah.
Right. So volume. When you said earlier that volume doesn't really matter too much on a longboard.
Well, it matters,
but not as much.
With like broader strokes than on a shortboard. So like.
Yeah, you've got more board, so it's
right.
Yeah,
because
so
it's wider,
proportionately, wider and longer and thicker, and if you put an extra litre or 2 litres into a shortboard, the rider will feel it. Whereas on a longboard, you won't really.
Right. How do you measure the volume?
Well, so the old school way to do it was to get a big tub of water.
Yeah.
Put weights on it.
And then sink the surfboard
and
measure how much water it displaces.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking that you would have to do. That makes sense to me. How much water
Yeah, exactly. But around the time that people started caring about volume, or shapers started talking about volume, was around the time that computer-aided design came in, and it just spits it out. There's a program called Akku Shaper that will give you the volume of the board in litres and in cans of beer.
That's handy.
Which is really handy. Yeah, it's
Australian program.
strangely enough, it is. I think I'd never have joined the dots on that.
So I mean, volume wise, it's one of those things. It's a weird one, isn't it? It's one of those things where some people really care about the volume. Some people are like, whatever.
Yeah,
it's it's more about the shape and stuff. So if that covers volume pretty much, then on to your fins.
Right.
Should we just do a different episode for fins?
Yeah. Tune back in next week for fins.
It could be. I think fins might be quite a long one.
It could be. I think we need to be kind of selective about what we cover in fins.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would make sense for me to talk about it from a shaper's perspective.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we look more at fin placement than fin type. Mm-hmm. So I think it's true with longboards and shortboards. Fin choice is really personal. There are certainly, certain boards that will favour a certain type of fin, but really it comes down to the way the rider rides that board and the way that board responds and how that fin responds to the input that the rider gives it. So broadly speaking, I think the actual fin itself is probably down to personal choice in a lot of ways.
On that, where we're going to go on the next episode. Say I had a mate who's a joiner, for example,
right,
and I got him to make me a wooden fin.
Yes,
you could then glass that. Would it be the same sort of process? So then I could have a wooden fin.
So who's this mate?
I know this really cool joiner. I don't tell you about it. We're going to start a podcast together. Portuguese surf show is going to be. I'm off. See you later.
So if you had a board and you wanted to glass on a fin or some fins, you could definitely do that.
Yeah.
And you can make them from wood, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, there's so many different types of fin templates and sizes, and
so I know you said you're going to talk about it from a shaper's point of view, but I have a question.
Okay.
The other day I was thinking, right, I want to get a new longboard fin because the longboard fin I've got is a friend of mine's fin, and the fin's worth more than my board. So every time I take it out, I'm like, just paranoid about it.
Yeah, sure.
And I went to go and buy a new longboard fin, and there's so many shapes and sizes, and I just go, what do I want?
Yeah, it's so.
Do you know what I mean?
It's so hard.
Yeah.
So if there's a few general shapes, I imagine, of like a big single fin.
Sure.
And then we could look at the multiple fins for.
Well, I've just thrown a completely spanner in the works because you were going to talk about it from a different way, weren't you?
Yeah, but that's okay.
That's just something. That's a question I had. Popped into my head there, which was about longboard fins. Do you think the actual shape or size of it makes a big difference?
Massive.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes a massive difference. So, I mean, and okay, to give you an insight into that, if you're looking at a fin, the things that will affect it is the overall length.
Yeah.
So the distance that comes from the bottom of the board, the rake. So the distance it kind of sweeps back, the thickness of the base, so that how far back the base of the fin goes. That has a massive difference to a massive effect on how it turns. The thickness of the fin, the type of foil of the fin, so like an airplane wing.
Yeah.
And then you get into the stuff that I think about with boards, which is the positioning of it. And I mean, the material actually makes a massive... Okay. I have one thing I definitely want to say about fins.
Yeah.
It absolutely is critical to the way your board rides. And it makes no sense whatsoever to spend, 600, 700 pounds on a new board and then to whack cheap plastic fins in them.
Yeah.
This is a conversation I have quite a lot with people. Loads of people kind of feel like, oh, I'm not a good enough surfer to feel the difference.
Yeah.
And I think that is absolutely untrue. I think, okay, so with performance boards, I think it doesn't really matter where you start with it. Just get rid of the plastic stuff. Get rid of it. Spend, whatever it is, 70 quid, 80 quid on a decent set of fiberglass fins, whack them in there and see the difference. It will blow your mind how much difference it makes.
Right.
Actually, that said, I've got a really good fin on my board at the
moment. The material makes a massive, massive difference. It really does.
Yeah.
And like everything from there on, the foil, the sweep, the base width, the height, all that stuff is kind of fine tuning it. But you will never ever get a good performing fin made of plastic.
Right.
So bin them. Don't bin them, recycle them. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So the thickness of the fin at the base. So tell me if I'm wrong. I'm just gonna from like my own kind of thought on science, maybe.
I'll do it for you. You're wrong.
if it's thinner at the base,
Yeah.
will the board turn easier?
Yes.
So if it's flatter at the base, it will go faster in a straight line.
Yes.
Right.
So
see,
yeah.
shut you up.
So the function that the fin is performing loosely is keeping the board moving forward, no matter where the input is where the energy input is coming from. So if you're in trim, you see guys surfing finless boards, and this happens all the time. They'll be in trim, and then they just start sliding sideways down the face.
Right. Yeah.
Right. That's because there's no fin there to drive them forward. And the way it works is kind of like rollerblading or roller skating, where you'll be stood on one foot and you push sideways with the other foot, and that drives you forward.
Yeah.
There's a proper name that I learnt in physics in year 11, but I can't remember. But anyway.
That was a long time ago, though,
it was,
it?
many, many years ago. So that's basically what's happening there, and that's part of why they're important. But they also dictate the way in which the board turns and everything. It is everything, and if I could give you one piece of advice, if you can't afford a new board but you're riding a board that's got plastic fins in it, change the fins.
Right.
It will completely transform your ride. Guaranteed.
Right. That's a good tip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the fin placement then.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
So yeah, you say what you were going to say now.
Right.
Took you off on one.
So there's kind of there's many elements to this, but the elements that we really look at when we're setting fin placements, because you are massively dictating the way the board will ride. With longboards, it's actually pretty easy, because the vast majority of customers will want a box in, just a standard longboard box, potentially side bites if they're looking for something more performance oriented, but they're a fairly standard placement. And then the beauty of those actually for longboards is that you can then shuffle that fin backwards or forwards, depending on the fin that's in there, or the conditions on the day, or whatever. You can do that to kind of
and you can change the
ride.
fins as well,
exactly,
depending on the conditions. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. There's nothing wrong with glass in fins, by the way, but it's just these days it's a bit more practical, really.
Yeah. I was thinking more. Would it be possible to make a fin? So put a box in and making a fin that will then fit into that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can definitely do that.
I've seen his joinery work, so I'm going to have to replace it after a while.
If this is your way of asking Leighton to make your fin, it's pretty poor, mate.
It's not going to happen, is it?
It doesn't matter. I do the editing on this, so it works both ways.
So on a longboard, then the fin placement.
Yeah.
It's not massively crucial.
Well, it is, but it's flexible, because you generally have sort of a 12-inch box in there, so you're able to shuffle the fin backwards and forwards. So loosely speaking, a fin that is moved further forward from the tail will be looser and more responsive to turns, but will be less stable on the nose, and it will be less efficient at generating speed.
Right.
It'll be less drivey. A fin further back in the box, so towards the tail, will be more efficient at generating speed, more drivey, and more stable if you're nose riding, but will be harder to turn.
Right.
So that is the relationship there. So yeah, if you are on a longboard and you really like it, but it's too hard to turn, just try shuffling your centre fin forward. It'll make a massive difference.
Oh, that's good. So why would it be so, like the depth of the fin, the length of the fin, what does that relate to?
It's not really in isolation. I don't know how to articulate this. It changes the way it rides. It kind of depends. It's not just about the depth of the fin. It's about the rake on the fin as well, and the foil and material and all that stuff that we spoke about. But generally speaking, if you had two fins that were exactly the same, save for the height, the fin that is longer, taller, higher, whatever, bigger, will be better at generating speed and drive, but will be less maneuverable.
Okay. Right.
So that's broadly speaking. But part of the reason that it is better at generating speed is because it has a larger surface area. But that's also the same reason that it's harder to turn. So
it makes sense.
There's a direct relationship there. So yeah, fin position.
Sorry, I was going to say then. So, like you're saying, with the fin further forwards or further back, would it not make sense then if you wanted both? I know this is probably going to be a stupid question, but just to have a thicker, like longer fin, longer fin. That's it. Yeah, I can use words. Me. Having a longer fin. Would that make a difference? Could you compromise on both then? But you take down the difficulty in turning, but you then increase your ability. Like you say, move it further forwards and further back. Just take a bigger fin and just take that whole area up.
At the base of the fin.
At the base of the fin.
So that will make it really, really hard to turn.
Yeah. But super quick,
bigger.
though.
Right.
But it'll be super quick then.
Yeah.
But no, because what I was thinking is, like you said, move it further back, you'll be able to like nose ride it. Move it further forwards, you'll be able to turn it better.
Right.
But the compromise, what if you want to be able to, like some guys you see turning, twisting, turning, and then they go bang, and then all of a sudden they're nose riding. You're like, you haven't flicked your hand underneath and moved your fin back.
No, of course not.
Would that be putting it centre then, or
it's not so either or as that. There's degrees of adjustability there. So you might, for instance, be out on a board on a certain type of fin, and you're nose riding really well, but you're finding it a little bit tough to turn the way you want. If you slide it forward a little bit, there will be that compromise.
Yeah.
So it's not to say that you won't be able to nose ride it or that you won't be able to generate speed, but it will be less efficient at that, but more efficient at the other thing.
Yeah. So then that comes down to serviceability again.
Yeah.
And totally.
Yeah. So
totally. And conditions.
It's just unique to each person.
Yeah.
So when it goes into like multiple fins,
right,
for shorter boards.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Okay. So to talk about that, we need to talk about the function of each fin.
Okay.
Really, in different setups. So I'm really into the history of surfcraft. I find it fascinating, and actually that's why I build boards. So I the way I see it in the shortboard revolution, which is kind of from the 60s onwards. So those big, 10-foot, 10.6 boards, they're part of the shortboard revolution. There have been so many different design theories between then and now to get where we are today with high performance surfing, right? And along the way, there were all these different ideas and different concepts and different approaches to building surfcraft that were explored for a little bit and then kind of binned. So I find it really interesting to go back, look at that stuff and say, okay, that's cool. What can we apply from what we know today from modern surfboards to that? And what happens? You know, so like I've got, I'm doing loads of the shortboard at the moment that is, the front half of the board is based on a 70s single fin. So it's got kind of chimed out rails and a fair bit of volume up there for paddle power and that sort of stuff. But the tail on it is a high performance thruster. It's called the Mullet. Business at the front, party at the back.
It's the perfect name.
But that's the thing. Like, and what you come out with is something that's completely unique, and that they never would have made at that point. But actually works really well. So anyway, sorry, bit of a tangent there. So there was a clear kind of progression to from, you know, running single fins or no fins before that, but running single fins through to sort of what we have today. Typically, you'll find single fins, twin fins, thrusters, quad fins, and then occasionally oddball stuff like asymmetric setups or 5-fin setups. I've seen 6-fin setups. There's all sorts of stuff. Right. Weird and wonderful stuff going out there. There's also things which shouldn't be discounted, like bonzes. But it's all kind of, I put that in the category of other. That's not massively common.
Yeah, I think if we just stick to the sort of standard.
Yeah.
If you want to go, I think if you want to go that way, you're already past this podcast anyway. If you're going to start looking into this, that sort of stuff, you know.
Tuned out about an hour ago. Okay, so broadly speaking, any kind of cluster of fins has two categories. There's center fin and there's rail fins. So the center fin is simple. It's just like in a single fin longboard. It's right in the middle. It stands up straight, and the further forward it is, the less drivey it is, but the looser it is. The further back it is, the more drivey it is, and the harder it is to turn. Right. Simple. The rail fins are way more complicated. So what we look at that will affect the way the board handles massively is the distance of those rail fins from the tail, the distance of that fin from the rail, the toe-in, which is whether it faces forward or that it faces sort of towards the stringer, how far that is, and it's measured quite accurately. And then there's the cant as well, which is the kind of splaying out of that fin. So
you got to really think in 3D for
massively. Yeah. And so
sounds like a bit of a cant of a job.
Oh, that was a really poor dad. That was a terrible dad joke. That was.
Thanks for coming, guys. I think we're done here.
You're so pleased with yourself.
I really made myself laugh as soon as you said that. I had to hold it in.
Genuinely, you've turned into a 5-year-old. That's amazing. I've never seen your face light up like that, Pete. It's incredible. Right, so fins.
Anyway, I'll cut that out.
So any, like, I'm talking tiny adjustment to those kind of factors in the positioning of the fin makes a massive difference to how the board rides. Like massive difference. Right.
So you could get everything else right with shaping the board.
Right.
Comes out into the fins.
Yep.
And it just won't work.
Yep. I know that firsthand. So sometimes I make myself boards that are just kind of testing the water, so to speak.
Yeah. This pun. See, we're on to puns now. This is what I was trying to ask last time. So, like, once you've glassed a board, if you've put those fins in the wrong position, can you fill and move them, or?
Not easily, not well.
No.
Not really. It's. I mean, I haven't. I built a board fairly recently, and I deliberately wanted to experiment with the fin position to see kind of how far outside of the norm I could go before it stopped working.
Yeah.
And the board works, but it's nowhere near. It doesn't perform in the way that it should, and it's purely down to the fin position.
Right.
Is that what you call a wall hanger now?
Absolutely. Yeah. Not for sale. Spend the rest of its life in it. No, in fairness, actually, I ride it quite regularly.
Yeah.
It's not that it's unenjoyable to ride, but I just know that it's not quite right.
Right.
So yeah.
Can you tell from riding it what you've done wrong in those fin positions?
Yeah.
From how it rides?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think, I mean, definitely. And, I made the same board again and changed the fin positions, and it rides beautifully.
Yeah. Did you change it a lot?
Well, I mean, we're talking about sort of fractions of an inch.
Really?
It's not massive amounts.
That's
It's
amazing. It makes that much difference.
Yeah.
It's
Massive.
a bloody expensive experimental phase.
Yeah, it
though,
is.
Isn't it?
It is.
It's like when you're working into is there a computer program now, and you could put all this in, and it'll go right. Well, if you put them there. Has someone worked that out yet?
I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
But I just don't buy it. I'm really old school like that because, I mean, I think you can model how an object will interact with a flat surface of water with an external power source. Fine, but you can't. Like I said before, I've never ridden two waves that are exactly the same.
Yeah.
How do you model that?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There's only. I kind of feel like technology and computer programs can only go so far with this stuff. I think at some point you kind of you need a person to make that decision.
Yeah.
Comes down to the experience of the shape of that. After that.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know how much further do you want to go into fins? How deep do you want to go?
Yeah. So you've said about this, the single fin and then the side rail fins,
Right.
Then if you go what's a twinny?
Okay, so 20 is actually a good place to start because it for the rail fins in general, whether it's twin, thruster, or quad, these rules are true. So where do we start? We'll start with the distance. So distance from the tail, same as with a single fin. So if they're further forward, it will feel looser, but it'll be less drivey, less efficient at generating speed. Further back towards the tail, it will be more drivey, but harder to turn. Okay.
Right.
Distance from the rail, the closer to the rail the fin is, the drivier it will be.
Right.
And the harder it will be to turn. But not just to turn, also to release turns.
That makes sense. So, because when you pivot on your back foot, so anything that's wider, so like you said, like the base of a large single fin, or if the twin fins are making a wider surface area, it's harder for you to pivot off of that point.
Right.
So everything that's smaller to like a central point,
Right.
or closer to a central point, makes it easier to turn in general. Right. That's okay.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good way to see it.
Right. So I think that's how
He
I'm
does
working
have some
out in my head.
uses.
I'm just working out in my head to just I'm trying to find like a very simple general rule for everything that makes sense to me, so I can kind of understand what's going on.
I know we've given you a really difficult job to try and put all of this into words without having to show everything or actually draw it out in front of people. Yeah,
I kind of feel like we need a PowerPoint.
A little keynote would be lovely, wouldn't it?
Yeah, no. I mean, and then as you say with fins, then you just is it personal preference or is it shaper's preference?
Well, fin position is absolutely down to the shaper, but what you plug into that is completely personal preference.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of why I feel like, rather than talking to fins themselves, because what works for me doesn't work for everyone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I like the things that I like, and I know that I like those things because I've tried them.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, I get it. Fins are expensive, and I'm not suggesting everyone needs to go out and spend $2,000 on a full quiver of fins, but I'm just saying, like, try stuff.
Yeah. But definitely not plastic.
Definitely not plastic. Avoid at all costs.
Right.
What would you say the best things out there to get are then?
In terms of material, or so fiberglass, definitely.
Yeah.
Anything that's made of fiberglass will kind of load and release in a way that that brings out the best in your board.
Yeah.
And there's all sorts of derivatives, different core technologies, and you have carbon in there, and there's all sorts of stuff. But fundamentally, if it is made of a composite that's fiberglass based, it's going to work 10 times better than anything that's molded plastic.
Right.
Yeah. So that thing you said about going to the center is true for everything except cant.
Right.
The cant angle, the further away from the center you go, the less drivey it is, and the easier it is to turn.
Right. That's because it's acting more as a brake.
No, I'm trying to think this through. I think it's to do with the way the fins are foiled.
Right.
Because side fins are they're foiled generally like an aeroplane wing. So there's a flat on the inside, there's a foil on the outside,
Does it work
and
like
it creates
a
lift.
counterlever, like a counterlever then? So you're like pushing into one, it's pulling on the other one.
Not so much like that, I think, because generally when, like, if a rail fin's engaged, the other rail fin's not.
Yeah.
Or if it's doing the work, I mean.
Yeah.
It's more. I think it's more to do with the foil on the fin. And I could be completely wrong about this, actually, but that's creating a lift, basically. So the more vertical that fin is, the more the lift it's creating is pushing you into the face of the wave, pushing the back of the board in the face of the wave. Whereas as the cant angle comes into it, it will be creating more vertical lift,
Right.
keeping it looser.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's kind of a difficult one as well. When you said cant, first of all, that you've got to think of that factor.
Yeah.
You're like, how the hell do you do that? But that makes sense now. Like you said, it's shaped. If you think of it in terms of an aeroplane wing,
Right.
So an aeroplane wing is curved on the top because it flows the air quicker.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Isn't it?
Don't look at me. I ain't got a clue what you're talking about.
Yeah, and then it's flat on the bottom, which the air flows slower, so it creates lift. But obviously, we're talking water, not air. But that's how an aeroplane wing works, isn't it? So,
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It
is a massive, massive area, isn't it? It's you could write a book on fins.
Massively, yeah. I mean, you could, yeah. There's a lot in it, and I'm in no way a specialist when it comes to fin design. I understand the kind of effect of fin placement.
Yeah.
And yeah, but the actual fin design, things like the foil and the rake and all that stuff that we spoke about, I mean, that is so incredibly detailed. It's not funny.
Yeah.
And there are people out there that specialize in that, and it's not me. So I know what I like. I know what I like to ride.
Yeah. Well, that's the good thing for you when it comes to fin boxes, I suppose.
Right.
That you don't need to think about it too much, do you? Obviously, the placement takes like a massive. There's a massive area of it.
Sure.
But like you said, it's not all of it, is it? So it's,
no, absolutely.
And then people can put in what they like, then, can't they?
Exactly right. Yeah. And I think that is, like you say, it's the real benefit of having those systems. Yeah.
I think it might be all of the areas.
Yeah. Is there anything else you think is
like important to?
I've
to
got
look at?
one more really important one that we haven't covered at all. Surfboard bag.
Oh yeah.
Why is that
sock or bag?
Depends. Okay, so I have thoughts on this.
Yeah, I thought you would.
And they're largely shaped by my Antipodean heritage. It's really hot in Australia.
Yeah.
And like the padded bags get ridiculously hot in the sun. So I would always just use socks and just, take care of my stuff. And that's fine. If I flew somewhere, I'd put it in a proper bag. But that's me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you use a sock in this country then?
Yeah. Yeah, all but one of my boards. Yeah.
But the really expensive board.
No. It's the one I bought. It's the one I flew with from Australia. So it's got.
So it came in the bag, and it's still in the bag.
It's still in the bag. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I think that is about it. So,
that's really good.
Cheers for that. I know it's a really difficult thing to do.
Yeah. I think you did really well at articulating it, actually, because, I could understand it. So that's a good marker if I can understand it. So
I have to say it was definitely a new challenge for me. So I apologise to anyone that didn't make sense.
It's really good. I think this is actually going to be the longest podcast we've recorded so far as well. Yeah. Might have to split it up into 2 parts. Yeah, so that's it. So our next one will be in this series will be a consultation with yourself about what we want out of a board and. We'll go from there. So, nothing else to talk about?
No,
go and give us
talk about
I tell you what, we want to go and give us a like and a follow on Instagram or Facebook or subscribe on any of the podcast platforms. That would be very helpful. And if you want to go and visit Dom's website, it is
originsurfco.com, and you'll also find me on all social media outlets.
Yep.
There you go.
And are we going to mention the competition?
Probably shouldn't we?
That'd be a good idea, wouldn't it?
So, January Blues competition we've started. If you head over to our Instagram page, we'll put a post about it on our website as well. If you head to the Instagram page, all throughout December, I've been adding prizes that companies have added to the pot, and we've got some pretty epic ones in there. Yeah. We've got first prize is a full day's photo shoot of surf photo shoot. And second prize, there'll be a half day of that. Third prize will be a print of choice,
which is
from N&M Photography.
Yeah, in itself is an amazing prize anyway, but it's just one.
That's just one of the prizes. We've got Go Dry hangers. We've got Sea Monster in there. We've got
Surf
Eco
wax.
Cone. We've got wax coming out your arse for the rest of it. There's like a year's supply of wax in there by the end of it. It's going to be huge, this one. So, head across to our Instagram.
To enter this January Blues competition, what we want to see is...
You've got to guess what you've got to do.
We want to see the kookiest photo.
Your kookiest photo of you surfing. You can be in the water, you can be...
falling over when you're getting changed.
You can be out of the water with your wetsuit on the wrong way round. You could set a whole scene up in your house and whatever. The kookiest photo that you can possibly get or you have of yourself...
which are comfortable for us to share on social media.
Yeah, and with the world.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all you've got to do to enter. And there's first, second and third place. We'll work out how we're going to choose the winners because we haven't done that yet. But
we'll just
pick
find
them.
the ones. Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's it. That's it for this show. And we'll see you next time. Cheers.
Cheers, thanks.